welcome back to the 1% Show. If you're new here, tune in to hear me spin the yarns with authors, savants, and eccentric humans every week. Today on the 1% Show...
My mind at the time was also really dirty, so I'm talking about, like, pussy. Okay, that is like my number one word. There is a school in Helena that was built, and before they built it, there was a cemetery there. And they took all the dead bodies, and they put the school on top of a cemetery. All right, let's keep it at that. Wait for the next podcast.
Whoa! Next level shit.
Fucking what's the odds of going to LA first day, hanging out with Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman? First fucking day. You know what I mean? And wherever I looked, I saw this girl with short blonde hair and a perfect body walking down the street. So I broke down. I don't even like to admit this on this podcast. I don't like this part of the story. I broke down and I called her back up and I told her the truth. I said...
I'm your Aussie host, Brandon Nankivell, and it's time to kick back and enjoy the show. Let's go. You can get a free audiobook by signing up for a 30-day trial. Head to brandonnankivell.com/audible. That's Brandon, B-R-A-N-D-O-N, Nankivell, N-A-N-K-I-V-E-L-L. Again, that's brandonnankivell.com/audible. I use Audible on the daily and have been for months. I use Audible to integrate reading into my daily activities like my morning walk, cooking food, and driving my car. You can do the same. Now, to be sure that Amazon doesn't bite my ass, I have to tell you guys that the 1% Show has no affiliation with Amazon. All proceeds will go directly into my pocket so I can buy myself a cup of coffee. Thanks guys, and head to brandonnankivell.com/audible to sign up for your 30-day trial and get a free audiobook. Hey, what up 1% friends and family? This is Brandon, the 2018 version of Brandon, coming at ya. So today we've got Wolf on the show, bro. Like you're gonna have a blast. I mean, this I shouldn't say this. I really shouldn't. But I will anyway. This was absolutely one of my most favorite episodes in the entire season of the 1% Show. This conversation I enjoyed so much. I mean, Wolf is just such an authentic, vibey, buzzy, creative, storyteller type of person. And there's no other wolves in this world. There's no other wolves. Wolf was one of my first YouTube clients, and we've become great friends since. So you're just going to have a blast in today's podcast episode. You're going to love it. Now, anyway, I just wanted to give Wolf a special mention about his new hit single, Baby, You Know Me. It's part of the album Poison to the Artists, and it's been gaining a bit of attention lately, so congratulations to you, Wolf. I love you with all my heart, and I'm so proud of your achievements and your successes, and just you as a person, man. I am glad you were born. I am glad you were born onto this planet, into this absurd existence. Welcome, my friend. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly roll a segment from Wolf's song, Baby You Know Me, and then we'll get right on into the conversation. So with that said, enjoy. I don't know if I could pay this new religious bent that you made. As you see, I'm a scientist. We've come out of the Big Bang, or haven't you? You came from the Big Bang, and I came from the Big Bang. So, I've started recording. This is a test. 1, 2, 3. Could you say something for me, Wolf?
1, 2, 3, test. The brain is a highly formed, differentiated, complex organ interconnecting nerve activity responsible for thinking in higher animal forms.
to the listeners listening in right now, we have got Wolf, and I'd love for you, Wolf, just to give an introduction of who you are and what you do to the 1% Better fans listening right now.
Oh my goodness, what do I do? I'm sort of a adventurer, explorer, chess player, musician, writer, filmmaker, virtual reality, float tanker, reader, learner type of guy who's just, trying to figure things out, I think, in this interesting realm / world that we're in right now. I mean, you and I, obviously, I don't want to go on already with this question, but you and I, here we are, we're like, all these things are going on inside of the world. And you know what I mean? We had Comey getting fired today. We have soldiers circling North Korea. And the world is in a really strange place. It's in a bizarre place. And here we are making these animated book summaries, just exploring.
It's fantastic, isn't it? And you've also, you've got a lot of involvement in the music and movie industry. And I think when we were talking earlier, you said something like you've happened to stumble upon one of Kurt Cobain's audio engineers or something along those lines. Is that right? Or
oh yeah, sure. So being a musician, it takes you to really crazy places. And so what you're thinking about is when I was a musician, I somehow or another got involved with this great musician / engineer. His name's John Hanlon, and he's the same dude who Kurt Cobain wanted to record Nevermind with. And I could talk a lot about this type of thing, but just to cut to the chase, it was wonderful to be able to work with somebody who records with Neil Young, REM, these big bands, and to have him, he flew up from Malibu and we recorded an album. So there we are, we're recording and things going great. And then all of a sudden I have another friend who, I guess at the time I was just, flipping through Facebook and I heard this unbelievable song. I couldn't believe how beautiful it was. And it was from one of my friends. And I was like, holy shit, this music is unbelievable. Who did this? They said, well, a guy locally here did this. I'm like, oh my God, this sounds unbelievable. So I had to meet this guy. And then I started hearing about this guy who moved into town. His name is Schmed. And so Schmed winds up living right down the street from me. And he works with the drummer from Fits and the Tantrums. He's been a bass player for Weezer, and he produced and / engineered some of Ween, which is one of my favorite bands. And so we really clicked instantly. We saw eye to eye, went in there, and we got in an argument right off the bat over something ridiculous. But it was interesting. I think it was, which is worse for you? Cocaine, like snorting cocaine, or visiting prostitutes? And he, interestingly enough, thought that prostitutes are worse for you. I'm like, you can wear a condom with a prostitute. Snorting cocaine is so deadly, man. What? So anyway, that was our first conversation, and we instantly bonded over that because it became heated. It was like a 2-hour thing. And so we recorded this song, and it was the best song I had ever recorded. And then we recorded another song, and that was the best recording that I had ever done as well too. And so I was like, band, I went to my band. I said, you know what? I love that we're recording with these like huge engineers that we, flew in from Malibu and all that shit. But there's this guy right down the street who's fucking blowing my mind. I tell that to my band members. My band members get so pissed off at me that they break up the band. They're like, no, we want to stick with this guy. I'm like, well, this guy, we're seeing eye to eye. I mean, the songs that we were recording were incredible. So anyway, that was sort of what happened with the music. But, sitting under cherry trees underneath the stars and living that artistic lifestyle on sleeping bags in the long, hot summers. That's what you can do when you put yourself out there and have faith that what you're doing is going to actually surmise or become something. And so I think that, like, as you and I know, these things that we do are totally impossible by rational, reasonable means, and they're stupid. And the point is, those that we don't fit in, it's like Jerry Seinfeld talks about this story where about a couple saxophone players looking in at some people sitting around a Christmas tree on Christmas morning. You probably heard this, right? They're sitting around the Christmas tree, and the saxophone players look at each other and they're like, oh, can you believe it? Can you believe it? And then they look at each other and says, I'm so glad that we're not them, huh? Whew, we really lucked out. And then they continue through the wet slosh and the rain and the snow, So that's what it's like being an outlier, being somebody who is, that doesn't fit in, and turning off these devices that are addictive wherever we look, that are really trying to bait and tempt and suck us into their mold. It's these people people who are trying to create who we are. And so I think about that a lot. You know, how can I not fit in? How can I not give a fuck about this, that, and the other and not be part of some group?
Yeah, I love it, Wolf. And that's a strong reason why I invited you onto the podcast. I love people with unconventional ideas, and especially those who live sort of unconventional lifestyles and do that sort of thing. So, man, like there's so many directions we could go. Like when you said about that debate between, well, you know, what's better or worse, Coke or prostitution? I feel like we could do like a whole podcast on something like that. I don't know what the variables would be, but I'm sure we could cook up a storm. But anyway, I want to take us back. This is what I ask every guest. It's normally the first question I ask, and that is to take us back to when you were 14 years old. What was life looking like for you at that age?
It was in the realm of fantasy and reality. I was roaming around on my bicycle in Little Helena, Montana. Helena is a wonderful place where the mountains are inky black. The sun comes out like Florence of the Rockies. And it's a magical place because there aren't parents anywhere. So it's sort of like Lord of the Flies. It's kids roaming around on their bicycles, theatrical kids. I knew the guy from the Decemberists. So I hung out, the lead singer, and I hung out with him and his little group. And that was the Drama Kids. And what was great, Colin Malloy, that's his name. And what was cool about that is that in the summers then, we would go camping and, take acid or, smoke weed, but he would sing to us. And so it was so inspiring to have him singing to us. But to be living this sort of spectacular, very idyllic childhood that I think that a lot of people don't really have, because back then, at least, and especially in Helena, because there's no parents anywhere, there's a lot of safety. And so, but with that said, in my house and in my life, my parents were incredibly nurturing to my art, to say the very least, but yet at the same time, they had their own demons. And so when I came home, Clash of the Titans would be on the television being reviewed by Roger and Ebert. And when I saw that image of Clash of the Titans, I was like, oh my God. And that really played upon this idea of, in some ways, being alone in such a small town, riding on your bike, being alone, running through storms, seeing the ghosts and, of large cathedrals and hail and shit. Point being, I had a strong fantasy and reality situation going on, and a strong fantasy life in particular. And so when I saw those images, it transported me into like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to make. And so then what I did from there was I started making decisions when I was 14. I was unlike other 14-year-olds. I remember pretty much when I was 14, no shit, exactly when I was about 14 years old, I got a call from this guy, Chris Connolly, the editor of Premiere Magazine. Back in the day, there was this magazine called Premiere Magazine, which is the biggest movie magazine. It was like Time or Newsweek for movies. Anyway, he was the editor of Premiere. I'll never forget him calling me up. He says, hey, I'm reviewing Roger Ebert, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I'm going to interview you too. And so I was like, holy shit.
How awesome is that?
And so it was amazing. His name's Chris Connolly. He was on the show called The Big Picture. He said, we picked you because you're a young movie reviewer. So I was a movie reviewer for like 10 years for the local newspaper in Helena. And I was also a floor director at the TV station in Helena. So I would be, tooling with the cameras and making little movies all the time. So anyway, so that was a big deal to have. I was called out of class. All the kids were like, oh my God, there's this guy from New York calling you. So I went home to take the phone call. And when I got home, the door was locked. It was the one day my mom, she was a teacher, and she went to Butte that day. And so there I was stranded, locked outside as I could hear the phone ringing inside as he was calling me. I was like, and I grabbed a rock to throw it through the window. But terrified, I didn't. So, but then we wound up calling his office the next day, little help from my mom. We actually got through, talked to his secretary, and then he called me the next night, thank God. And then the article with me in it, right next to Arnold Schwarzenegger and Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel came out. And it said, 14-year-old film reviewer in Helena, Montana talks about this movie, And then they did a snippet of me talking about my favorite movies.
Incredible.
So,
what age did you start? Because you said you did it for 10 years, but you were 14 years old, so I'm thinking you must have been 4 years old. But was it did you start like when you were 9 or 10, or did you do it throughout?
I did. I was a little kid. What happened was I won a contest in the local newspaper
Okay.
Sorry to laugh like that, but I did. And I was talking about my favorite movies in this local contest. It was just silly. But point being, an editor took me under his wing who was there. And we talked about Woody Allen, Full Metal Jacket, RoboCop, all these movies, that were coming out way back when. and he honed my writing skills. And so every Sunday, kind of like what you and I do, every Sunday I had to come out with a movie review. And so I grew up with this sort of thing. Like every Sunday I gotta have this movie review out. So I drink a bunch of Pepsi and then I would edit it. And sometimes there were a lot of tears because it was hard to write it on the level that it would be in the local newspaper. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. And so did like a typical day after school, you put your bag on and you go home. Is what you do then just like watch movies and write about movies, or?
I was making movies. I had one of the first camcorders back in the day. And so I had my little friend Rich. And again, we lived in that fantasy realm of running home from storms. And in Helena, they had the biggest storms ever. The storms and the clouds would be coming in with lightning, and we could feel our hair on the back of our skin rising as we ran full blast, questioning God. And I would think, oh my God, is there a God? And then we'd run home and my mom would be in the house saying, turn everything off, unplug the Atari. So we'd run and we'd unplug the Atari and the TV, because remember, that's how it was back then. So we'd unplug all the appliances. We'd run downstairs. We had a library in my basement. So I come from like this family of heavy readers. And so my mom had a book club and called Great Books. And so I would run downstairs and I would sit in the library and I would read these, obscure books as the lightning would come in and we could hear the hail and that sort of thing as, and we would cuddle under blankets. And those were really, some of my best memories, hanging out in my basement, sometimes even reading just Archie magazine, Archie, Stephen King, the ABCs of witchcraft, and then of course looking for, bizarre books that my parents had that I probably shouldn't be reading, page 28 of The Godfather, things that kids not supposed to look at.
Wow, that's perfect. Like, it sounds like when I was 14 years old, your place sounds like the perfect place to go over for what we used to call a sleepover, where you stay over at your friend's house and you stay the night and you just get up to mischief and have fun. Man, your place sounds like the perfect place, especially because you'd be there. That's awesome.
No, that's great. Yeah, and what just slammed that door? And you look over and the door slammed itself, and it turned out it was a wind gust. Has that ever happened to you? Where the door slammed by itself because of the wind, like in that movie Backdraft, and you're like, what was that? Yeah, when you're a kid like that, you still believe and you're on the edge,
Yeah, gotcha. I also want to...
That's one of my favorite themes. But go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, sure. I also want to ask, my curiosity just goes nuts sometimes when I hear certain things. And you did say when you were 14, I don't know how open you are about it, but this is an open forum, so feel free to disclose as much as you want. But you mentioned you had an acid experience when you were a teenager. So I'm just wondering, do you distinctly remember the first time you encountered either acid or a psychedelic? And if so, can you describe that encounter?
I can. There's the first time I did it, and then there's the most important time I did it. So the first time I did it was just, that didn't count. Okay, I was in a dorm at Montana State University Film School, and I took that with some friends, and I was like, I got the incredible high, and I laughed for 10 hours. That was not what I call acid, okay? That was like me giggling on some kind of laced, methamphetamine. The real acid trip that I took, what I would call an actual acid trip where I tripped balls and went to another dimension, was when I actually had a bad trip. And that was, to me, even now, it's neurologically linked. Even now when I talk about it, there's a little part of me that remembers that inside of my body, inside of my skull meat body, that is saying like, holy shit, am I back there? And what happened was, it was so extreme that, should I just tell you what happened?
Sure.
I'll just tell you in a nutshell. Sure. What basically happened was, my friends, all film dudes, had tripped the night before, and I felt like I had somehow missed out. And so then I got together with them. I said, hey, I need some of this acid because I'm just going to do it myself because I missed out on last night. So fuck you guys. I went and I took, a few hits of this acid, and then I smoked bowl after bowl after bowl. So, as you can imagine, things got interesting pretty quick. And I'll never forget that there were lasers shooting between circle, and I heard a voice inside my head, and, you know, that just said that I'm a king, basically. Stick out your chest like a good king would, you know, and there was this laser going through my head, and then I remember it went through Mary Beth's head. When it went through Mary Beth's head, it would shoot like this, and then when it came out on the other side, it would go, and then it would go around like that. So it's like this, I try to imagine like we are electrons or atoms, and there's this connection between our brains. That started to happen, and I just thought it was fascinating. I also saw everything in grids, and I also saw everything in dimensions. And that's when I first started thinking about Jim Morrison's song that we are, you know, Take Me to the Other Side. And I thought, holy shit, I'm in the other side now.
Wow.
And I really believed that I had been tuned in like a radio. And I could see the dimension we were in. I saw it clear as day. I also believed in God, which is so unlike me. I knew without a doubt that there was a God. I was like, it's so fucking obvious. There's a God. I see it. It's perfect. Thank God I had this experience. I get it. There is a God. Jesus. Then I was also a master of video games, and it was all fun and games, playing quite literally playing Street Fighter, until I started doing this weird thing where I was jumping on the floor in and out between worlds. I would say, here I'm in this world, boom, now I'm in this world. Now, this is touching on that other idea that we were talking about earlier, which is this idea of fantasy and reality. This was my first real intersection with that, where I understood that there is this reality that you and I are in, and there's this other reality of the imagination. And so if I'm here, and then if I jump over here, I'm suddenly in another place, kind of like when you space off, and your mind naturally goes there. So how often, of course, are we actually here in the now, you know, instead of being zombified, codified, like a lot of these other people who are around us. Anyway, it scared me, and it scared me so much because I didn't know what reality I was in. And so it got confusing. And I thought that I was in a hospital bed, and my mom and my whatnot, they were all there trying to wake me up, and I had been in a coma. And they're like, come on, he's coming too, And I couldn't tell which reality I was in, and I started really freak me out. Not only to mention that, then my emotions took a dive. I was suddenly sucked into the black hole of darkness. And I look at Mary Beth, and I'm like, oh my God, this is what a bad trip is.
This is what a bad trip is.
To be bad tripping. Well, if I'm bad tripping, just tell me something funny. Let's get me out of this. And she says, you know, she starts to tell me a joke. I'm like, that's not funny. And so she takes me over to the bed, and she starts giving me a back rub, starts rubbing my shoulders. And as she's rubbing my shoulders, I can feel trees and limbs, and we're connecting through my body to hers, because she's on my back, right? Giving me a massage. And we're making love. We're not really making love, but man, we're making love. We're connecting. I can feel it. And it's a magical matrixy experience. And then she gets off me, and we're done. And then all of a sudden, Mulch, her boyfriend at the time, walks in, and Mulch looks at me, and I'm like, oh my God, Mulch, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Mulch. And Mulch looks at me like, what? Well, what just happened? I'm sorry. I'm like, oh, you don't know, Mulch?
You don't know.
I'm sorry. And he looks at me, and then he looks at Mary Beth, and he storms out of the room. So, anyway, it took me months to recover from that bad acid trip, where I think I did some damage. I had to watch TV every night. I was in post-traumatic stress syndrome, but I made a decision that night that I was going to shoot my fucking movie. So what happened was, before I tripped balls, I had a dream where I ate too much pizza. And in the dream, I dreamt a movie, and I was too scared to make the movie, okay? I didn't want to do the movie. Although it was a great movie. It was all about a serial killer and a couple of brothers. They go out to this hot tub thing, and they're traveling through dimensions. And I was too terrified to make that movie, but after I took the acid, I'm like, fuck it, you only live once. We got to do this now. So I dropped out of school. I got my friends to drop out of school with me. We moved to Helena. They one of them slept on my couch, and we started stealing the equipment from the local university. And back then we shot on 16 millimeter. and I called up every film person in Montana. I called up every single one of them, and I got this guy to help me. His name's Mike Hancock. Mike Hancock, the wonderful savior of my life, came in, and I got a kick-ass director of photography named Mike Bucher, and both of them are pros. Now you gotta understand, at the time, I'm like 18 years old. Okay, I just dropped out of college, and I'm 19, and I got two big pros to come work on my movie. And Mike Hancock works with Morgan Freeman, and Mike Bucher has shot some pretty big movies, like with who's Barbara Streisand married to.
Okay.
Anyway,
at this time, Wolf, were they still growing as artists or in their profession, or had they already filmed Morgan Freeman, or was that yet to come stage?
No, they were pros.
Right.
They were pros. Wow. And so I got big pros to come in on my movie. And so I went around to dentists, doctors, and lawyers. I raised up the money, got about $30,000. And my dad helped too. And I said to my dad, I'm like, Dad, hey, I'm not going to college now. It's just not going to happen. Okay. So could you just give me that college money? No. We sat down to coffee. Feel so guilty on some level to it about it today. But what do you to expect from like, a 19-year-old such as myself, And so then he did. My dad gave me a lot, but so did a lot of these other people. So then anyway, then all of a sudden I met one of my best friends in the world named Scott Duthie. And so Scott is a stuntman and producer, and he's produced some big movies like what did he do? Some Mormon movie, September Dawn, the executive producer of September Dawn. Have you ever heard of that? Anyway, that's one of his movies. Anyway, so we met, and Scott said, hey, I can get you some stuntmen. So then we flew in some stuntmen to light them on fire for the grand finale of the movie. And so we lit them on fire, and when you're a 19-year-old kid, it was cool because, it was like Woodstock in my backyard with the half the town was there to watch this fire. And we had, fire trucks and the police force. They were all there too to make sure that we didn't burn the house down. I never even asked my landlord, by the way. And the next day it came out on the front page of the paper, of like local filmmaker, has a guy on fire coming out of his back door for the finale of his movie. And I can't imagine the reaction of my landlord as he opened up the newspaper and said, holy shit, that's my house. So, it was, that was the beginning of the adventure of being like the adolescent 19-year-old who will do anything on a motorcycle and not care and just keep pumping the gas. Keep that fucking accelerator down. Keep that shit going because the frontal cortex isn't developed, as you know. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter at that time. There's nobody stupider than a 19-year-old. And that's why you're filled with confidence, balls to the walls. You just don't stop. And so we shot this movie. My girlfriend broke up with me. She decided that she's become a lesbian. She goes down to like...
What the fuck? This is getting better and better, Wolf.
Yeah. And I was devastated. Okay. Yeah. So I'm like, I can't move. And my friend Scott calls me up in the middle of the night. He's like freaking over 10 years older than I am. He calls me up. He's like,
Wolf, we're going to LA. Pack your shit.
And I tell my parents I'm going to LA tonight at midnight with Scott. And I'm going to pack all my 16 millimeter Showcron, which costs like $3,000, and all my film. And I should show you pictures of my bedroom. It was filled with film. Film was everywhere. Okay. Like fucking film, dude. You know how they don't have film now? I grew up in that film world. And so I was surrounded by film. And so for me to edit a movie, I had to do all cutting myself. So anyway, calls me up. Says that. I say, let's go. He shows up, middle of a blizzard. We drive down in the middle of the night down to Los Angeles, and we stop by, and I don't know how dark we want to make this story, meaning like how much I want to tell or
be as open as you want. Yeah. Whatever you feel comfortable with.
I won't say too much. Oh my God. What should I say? All right. I'll just say just a touch here. I can't. I can't. I can't say this.
That's okay.
Okay. It's too dark without his permission. I can't imagine if he somehow heard this or if it got back to him. The shit that I would go through. I really want to tell you, but just put the pieces together. We're in Las Vegas. Yeah, right. Anyway, so we keep going and we go into Los Angeles and I meet my new roommate. And my roommate now, by the way, he's kind of famous. But at the time, he's just a normal dude. And Scott says, this is your new roommate. And then we also had this guy, Bob Miles, with us. He goes, this is Bob Miles. He directed this movie called like The Blob Part 3 or something. It was a famous movie. It was famous enough that it was in all the video stores in the horror section. You know what I mean? But one of those like B movies, almost like Roger Corman. And he was also in the movie Spartacus, and he was married to the actress Vera Miles, who dumped him for like fucking another famous actor, like fucking Charlie Chaplin or something, but it wasn't Charlie Chaplin.
Yeah.
So anyway, just look up who Vera Miles was married to. Point being, I was thrust into another world, and it was really funny. And so literally the next day, my first fucking day in LA, my friend, Mike Hancock / Savior, who had done all the worm squirting, blood noose hanging effects for me up in Montana, who came to save my movie and made it look like, high special effects, calls me up, says,
Hey, we're shooting a movie in downtown LA. You got to get down here.
So I said, sounds great. My first fucking day. So I go outside into my old beat up Grand Am and I start driving to LA, and I'll never forget playing Grieg and these classical musicians as I drove into LA, seeing the giant fucking, when you see LA and you're 19 years old, it's like, like Beethoven's Fifth type of shit. Dun, dun, dun. And it's just these huge buildings. And I drive into LA and I go onto this set, and they say, he's over here, and here's your camper. And I go into the camper and I'm standing there in the camper and I look over to the left of me and Brad Pitt walks in. Now, when you're a kid, that's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Big deal even now, I guess. And so I thought, holy shit, that's Brad Pitt. And Brad Pitt comes over and he sits right there. And then 2 seconds later, Morgan Freeman walks in. And Morgan Freeman looks at me, and then he looks at Mike, and then he looks back at me, and he goes, hi. And he sits down. Now, the look he gave to Mike was like,
you boys ain't from around here, are you?
dude, on top of it, I was so crazy I had a cowboy hat on time. Okay, so just try to imagine. I'm a cowboy dude from Montana. Okay, the sides of my head are shaved, like shaved, almost mohawky. Okay, like hick. Okay, but yet at the same time, kind of freaky punk hick, right? So anyway, but then this one dude comes over to me and says, "Dude, I really like your haircut. I think you're like a really cool dude." And I basically like he just liked how I look. And then and I didn't, to be honest, I didn't feel like really giving him the time of day because I'm fucking hanging out with Brad and Morgan, right? He walks away, and then I talked like I mean I was nice to him, but I didn't really like connect with him. And I said to my friend, I said, "Who is that?" He said, "That's the writer of the movie." And the movie was Seven. And then I thought that was my first lesson. I was like, you don't know who you're fucking talking to. Okay. Cause he was this, Andrew Kevin Walker. Here I am throwing out names. He's going to hate me now, but you know what? Whatever. Never see him again. He walked over there, and I thought to myself, shit, I should have said something nicer because I'm a writer too. You know what I mean? I should have been I was more just like, I was just kind of blown away by the experience. I wasn't like not nice. I wasn't open enough. Anyway, I was kind of having my mind blown. I said, I am going to go outside and go talk to a normal person. So I go outside and I meet this guy who I think is a PA, and I'm talking to him, and we're outside, and my mind at the time was also really dirty. So I'm talking about like pussy. Okay, that is like my number one word. Okay, that's all I really know how to talk about. Okay, and maybe that was some type of thing how I fit in, like to be an adult. You know what I mean? Like to bond with older men. And he thought it was funny. Regardless, said, "Hey, I have a lot of movies coming up. Here's my phone number. Give me a call." I said, "Yeah, that sounds good." But I'm thinking again, he's just a normal PA. So anyway, what a day! I go home, and there I meet my new roommate, and I talk to my roommate, and he's like, "What did you do today?" I said, "Well, it's kind of crazy." And I told him who I hung out with. He said, "Holy shit! Well, that's really amazing." Because at the time, my roommate had not hung out with, he hadn't broken through. He'd been trying to break through for years, right? And here I'm, my first day, right? I mean, hanging out with, right, hit the lottery. And I said, yeah, but I met one normal person today. He goes, and he gave me his phone number, told me I should give him a call later. He's like, "Oh yeah, who's that?" And I said, I can't remember his name. Let me look in my pocket. And I pulled out the note and I said, Kevin Spacey. And he looks at me and he's like, "Holy shit, dude, Kevin's famous." And I said, and at the time, Kevin had not been in a big movie. And so I said, "Well, I've never seen him." I said, "What movies he's been in?" He's like, Glenn Ross. And I said, "I haven't seen that. It's not even on my register." Okay, you gotta understand. I'm 19 years old. I'm not in all that. Okay. So he's like, and he says, "Well, and he's famous on Cats, like big Broadway plays or something." And of course it wasn't Cats. But that's what I thought. I thought to myself, well, what is it? Fucking Cats, And I thought, well, Broadway plays don't really impress me anyway. He's a normal dude. And I mean, let's let's get real. If he's that big, what's he doing hanging out with me? So I go inside my bedroom, and then, I'm talking on the phone with Kevin, blah, blah, blah. And then my other friend calls me up. Scott calls me up, and he's like, dude, you've got to make a movie for Kevin Spacey. You've got to write a script. That Kevin is going to be huge. And earlier the day, I had also met like the producers of the movie. So, and they said, well, hey, do you have anything to show me? So now I have a dilemma. I'm like, at the time I was like, no, I'm going to make a movie. I'm going to make a movie for the producers of Seven. They asked me to show them a script. I'm going to write one in 2 days. And he said, oh, I think you should write one for Kevin. I was like, oh, okay. And so anyway, what a jumpstart to this like fantabulous life. But I was, again, you and I know, because we explored the land of self-development. I grew up without any self-development. Okay. I am just turbocharged on 19-year-old confidence, driving motorcycle with the accelerator. That's all that I know. I do not know any of the tools, talents, or skills that you and I have now. That, dude, I just like grew up last year after reading these books. Like all this therapy. And that's the thing about this concept, these beautiful psychology and these concepts that you and I learn and bask in. This shit's new. This shit just has come out. These people who have been stuck in front of their TVs realizing how addictive they are, they didn't get it. Well, that's the land I was in. I didn't understand my own emotions. I didn't have the awareness that like when I was talking to Brad Pitt, I was probably talking about like I was saying earlier, the brain's highly formed different. I was talking too fast. I wasn't slowing down. I didn't have the skills. I didn't have the social skills to be able to even operate at that time. Point being, if I had stayed down there, which I didn't, I burned out. I burned out from women. I dated this chick off of Star Trek shortly after. Okay, so I'm on the set of Seven. I meet this like model, like a Playboy model who is in those milk commercials with the milk on her chin. And so I go to her house. I got to tell you this. I go to her house and she's impressed with me because I'm hanging out with Brad, right? Brad, quote unquote. And which I'm not, okay? I'm not hanging out with him, but I did drive around with him, right? By the way, Brad's not going to remember any of this because he has facial recognition disorder. Anyway, right.
Facial recognition disorder.
I just had to say it that way because that's how you say that. Anyway. Point being, I met this girl and, I won't say her name at all just to protect the lives of the innocent, except for like the big stars who, well, I'll never meet again anyway. Cause anyway, point being, when I went out with this woman who was way beyond me, it was sort of a magical experience because I'll never forget sitting down with her and sort of, having this first interaction with somebody who's way out of my league. And she sat there looking at me and I faked it at the time by pretending to be older than I was, by being still. I practiced minimalism like Keanu Reeves or Clint Eastwood. And I kept my body and I just kept still. I would move my eyes, but I would kind of keep still, which gave me this effect of not the shaky 19-year-old kid. I learned just to stay still quickly. You just freeze like a fucking, hawk staring at a rabbit. And she somehow liked that stillness. And we hooked up rather quickly. But after we were done hooking up, she gave me a lecture. She's a born-again Christian and gave me a horrific lecture about how I had spilled the magical seed. What I spilled the seed. How horrible. I said, I'm so sorry. I didn't know I was supposed to spill the magical seed. And she was furious at me.
Never again!
She yelled at me.
Never again!
As lightning crashed down. So I go back home and I get on the phone with Scott and I said my new model Enterprise Spock girlfriend with the long green shit on the side of her face is broken up with me. What am I supposed to do? And he says, dude, things have gotten out of control. You've got to get inside the mindset of the LA woman. What do you mean the woman? He says, well, you got to get inside the mindset. The psychology of the female in the LA is completely different than the female that you are used to dealing with those hicks back up in Montana. These women down here are different. They'll tear you apart. Right. So what you've got to do, he said, is you've got to break up with her and show her who's boss. And not only that, you've got to do it harshly. You've got to show her on her answering machine. So that's a great idea. Okay, let's do it. So I called her. I called her up. I said, hey, it's me. It's too bad I wasn't able to get a hold of you. I'm sorry that I missed you. This really sucks, but I guess I might as well just say it. This is a little bit too much for me. I've been thinking about it in my bathtub, staring down at the bubbles, and it's moving too fast. So I guess this is it. I really had a great time with you. All right. See ya. Okay. Bye. Click. And I looked at Scott. My heart's beating so hard. I'm sweating. I've never done anything like this before. I couldn't believe I had violated my own ethics. Not only that, with a chick / woman / whatever you want to call her, I had sudden post-traumatic stress disorder, especially being such a horny bastard as I was at the time, that 19 years old, testosterone, that now I had no girlfriend, okay? How am I supposed to survive that shock after being with the prettiest female I've ever been with, basically, to suddenly being alone all by myself and having to face myself in the mirror? And wherever I looked, I saw this girl with short blonde hair and a perfect body walking down the street. So I broke down. I don't even like to admit this on this podcast. I don't like this part of the story. I broke down and I called her back up and I told her the truth. I said, I know this is going to sound really bad, like I'm like so easily influenceable, and I am, okay? But I was really thinking about us long picture. And in the big picture of things, apparently if I broke up with you now, then you're going to be devastated. Your ego is going to be so shocked. And she said,
It is. It was. My ego was so shocked. You know what? You were right. If you had just stuck with your friend's plan, I was so blown away, I called up all my friends. And I said, this 19-year-old kid just broke up with me. I was devastated. I couldn't believe it. My ego was shocked. I would have slept with you again. I would have gotten back together with you again.
But now she's like,
why don't you just come over?
What she meant to say, what she didn't say, which is that now she was just going to torture me, which is what she did do, as they do. And so that was the lesson, I guess, my first LA woman psychological experience. And that was part of my downfall. Shit like that. Again and again and again, times 1,000 each time, right? Each one. But that stuff hurts when you're a kid. When you're 19 years old, it hurts. Now, I never got into hardcore drugs like heroin or cocaine or anything like that, but I surrounded myself with the wrong people, with people who were bullies, monstrous, con men, predators, psychologically abusive, and actual stalking maniacs. I could tell you stories that, I don't know, maybe I can. That's why we're on a podcast.
Yeah,
but the thing is, right, yeah, we can go into the darkness, but the point is that after all this shit happened, I was basically sort of literally driven out of LA, And so, as I told you, how interesting it was that here my entire life in some ways was like the law of infinity attraction, universal intelligence being called into my life because I'm a kid. All I want to do is make these movies. And I did it in some ways. If you want to talk about manifestations, let's do it. Like in some ways it was manifested. Fucking what's the odds of going to LA first day, hanging out with Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman? First fucking day. You know what I mean? And so I think about that a lot. Again, to come back to the beginning of our conversation about faith and these ideas of extending ourselves and connecting and taking a leap and believing that, hey, if I can do this, then the laws of the universe are going to kind of come in and set in. And hopefully we're ready for them when we decide to, dig our claws in and jump into the side of the ravine or the cliff or the cave or whatever it is. And in this case, it was, I jumped in and I just got eaten alive. And so I started thinking like, my, what a romantic notion, just to be like everybody else and to go up to Montana and get a literature degree. Oh my God, how nice would that be? And I thought about this, playing Bruce Springsteen and listening to Stevie Nicks, and Fields of Gold by Sting. And I thought, my God. And I would sit and I started to kind of sing to myself, and I'd play the piano and I started dating this opera singer and smoking a lot of weed. And I was driven out by pure violence, which I won't get into. Horrific bully actor roommate. I had a run-in, not with that one roommate, although I had a run-in with him too. But the roommate that I was in with right now was sort of like one of those actors who, a bully abuser. And so here I'm hanging out with this monster, not knowing it, I should have figured it out as he's talking about putting a shotgun to his head and all this shit. I should have duh. But anyway, I got literally driven out of LA. And I was such a fuck up. I got there were all these tickets. Everywhere I went there, I got a ticket. Okay. Now, by the way, apparently this happened to Quentin Tarantino as well. Quentin Tarantino got so many tickets inside of his car that when you would open up his thing, the duffel thing, the tickets would come flying out, and he got so many tickets he went to jail, and that's what inspired him to do Reservoir Dogs. Anyway, yeah, that's where he learned that lingo. Anyway, that was like me. I had a boot on my car. When you open the things, the tickets would come flying out. When you're 19 years old, you just get a ticket wherever you look. And so by the end, I was with this 8 foot, let's say not that high, man, he was huge though. Let's say 6 foot way over 6'3". African-American gang member who had like a saw in his hand and we're sawing through the side of my boot with the plan to take the boot and to throw it into my car, throw it into a trash can, and I'm just going to race up to Montana and just flee out of LA. So, there's so many things I can tell you right now, I guess, but about what happened next that are just insane on another level. I'm wondering if I should go there.
Please do.
Or
I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it, Wolf. As long as or short as you want. We're all here to listen.
Okay. Well, oh man, that's quite a topic. I'm so sorry. I'm just trying to, like when you talk, you wonder if like I should go down that wormhole.
Yeah.
But we can. But I mean, we only have so much time to really talk. So I'm gonna skip that. Maybe we'll come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, I came back up to Montana and I saw my mom hanging out, waiting for me. I'll never forget, in front of our house, and I came over to her and she held me as I cried in her arms. That I felt, for all intents and purposes, failed. I had failed in LA.
Congratulations! You have failed!
And so thus began the new quest / venture of rebuilding myself and starting this thing where I just was going to keep moving forward. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was going to keep moving forward. And that became my mantra as I went down with a 6-pack of booze and a joint down in the basement. And I went to a little bar to go listen to some music. And here were these two musicians, and they were playing music. It was a father and son at this little Red's bar right in Helena. And there was nobody there except for me. And they were so beautiful and so perfect and so beautiful. I thought, holy shit, this is like the best thing I've ever heard. And it doesn't take millions of dollars, unlike music, to do what they're doing. They're sitting down and just doing it. So I went up to them after they were done, and I talked to the father. I said, "This is incredible." And he's like, "Well, what have you been doing?" I said, "I just came up here. I was trying to make movies down in LA, and I totally fucked it up." And he said, and I said, "But what you're doing is incredible." I said, "What do you think is a better art form, music or movies?" And he says, "Music, obviously, because it doesn't take millions of dollars to make music." So then I started thinking about this, and I started thinking about, well, what's the greatest art form of them all? And I thought about Nietzsche, and Nietzsche said music also. But the thing is though back in Nietzsche's day, they didn't have movies. But you want to talk about energy and that sort of thing. It really made me think. So then I said to him, well, what should I do? Should I go get like a piano or should I focus on my piano, which I've been playing my whole life? Classically trained, pretty intense, Rachmaninoff shit. Or should I pick up the guitar? And he said, well, I think as a musician, you should go pick up a guitar tomorrow. So I did. I went out and I bought a guitar, and for the next year, all I did was sit down in my basement and I play guitar and I banged on my guitar and I play my guitar and I got stoned. And I met some girl who was so hot. My God, she was hot. She looked like the fucking Star Trek Enterprise girl, except she was up here and she was the hot blonde. And then I met this dude who was talking about God, and his name was Chris. And Chris was talking about God, and he had a headband on, and he was like in the middle of a damn near psychosis, just like me. And he just came back from a school called Deep Springs, where they take like the smartest men, young dudes in the nation who could be going to Harvard, and they throw them in this little school, but they don't even do books. They skip the books and they go right to the ideas and the concepts, and they talk about like cows and milk, but in between milk and cows, then they come home at night and it's very competitive. Anyway, he had a total fucking meltdown, just like me. And we both liked this hot dancer blonde, and she was just a catalyst for us. As I said in the car as we were driving one night, out of fear, I'm holding the wheel and I look over him and I just say, "You like her too, don't you?" And he said, "I like her too." And that bonded us because we both had a crush on the same girl, who then wound up dumping us both horrifically. But it brought us together, and for a whole year we fused. Our fucking brains fused into one as we played chess and drank coffee at the local JB's and just talked. That's all we did, and we healed ourselves through words. And to this day, he's my best friend, and that's how we became best friends.
Okay, so was it at this point then? Were you in like your late 20s? You started.
No, this was. I was young. I was still a kid. I was a baby. I was at this point. We were like 22. So I was 19. In that, and I only spent like a year and a half in LA, maybe 2, and then I moved back up. Boom, met up with Chris, and then we spent a year or 2 together, fusing with our frontal cortexes.
So at what point did you feel like you began to feel like sort of had life on track?
Well, then I really started to fuck up, okay? Because now I decided I'm going to go to school. And when I went to school, I thought that it was weird for me. I couldn't handle. I was like, dude, I was just hanging out with Brad Pitt, Kevin Spacey, and now I'm fucking stuck in this class with these kids. And so my ego was totally unchecked. And so all I did was I sat in my dorm room and I played guitar and music and smoked weed, and just that's all I did, literally. So, well, granted, I was smoking weed all the time, but at least I was being productive. I taught myself to sing and I made up songs, and that's all I did. And I was taking philosophy class, and so I focused on philosophy. And you know, I had a crush on the local teacher and that sort of thing. And you know, and then Chris went to work for the New York Times. So, you know, so it was really interesting, just like, you know, this thing that started to happen. When did I start to grow up? Not till I was 26. What happened was that, there was a girl that I really wanted to impress, and I didn't want her to see what a loser that I had become. Meaning just all I did was play guitar and smoke weed, seriously, and sing. I didn't want her to see me, and I couch surfed, doing all that sort of thing. And so, yeah. And so what I did was I picked up Tony Robbins almost on accident. And, I started listening to this 30-day program on Tony Robbins, and I was blown away by him. And I just noticed that when I started listening to him, I started cleaning shit up. I started getting stuff done. Things started to come back together. I was like, whoa, something magical is happening here. That's almost like that I can't put. Can you hear that car in the background? Hopefully they turn that off. Okay, good. Hopefully they put a it's hard for me to concentrate. It's one of those cars that's going like
yeah, I can hear
right
it like very like a little bit right now.
I can totally hear it.
It's probably louder for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's out of control. Anyway, let's see if I can. Let's practice my focus skills.
If it does disable you too much, we can like do like a Mish Peace podcast again.
Wait, it's off. All right,
all good.
Okay, good. Where were we? Shit, there's so much happening.
So Tony Robbins, that's when you felt.
Oh yeah, right, exactly. So that was my first adventure into self-development on a hardcore level, and he really did save me. I mean, he really did. He came along, and I noticed that I gave up smoking, and I gave up smoking by neurologically conditioning myself. Every time I smoke, I would like look at the toilet, or I would look at a garbage can while I smoke. I didn't let myself just smoke. I'm like, if you're gonna smoke, we're gonna stare at a garbage can. We're gonna look in the toilet. And being the crazy mofo that I was, I started really getting crazy about it. There was this thing called the Dickens pattern. Have you ever listened to that on Tony Robbins?
I've heard about it, yeah.
Oh man, it's great. It's based on the Charles Dickens program. And so what you do is you accentuate the pain in your life by imagining what it would be like if you could kept up a certain pattern. So as an example, let's say I want to quit smoking cigarettes. Then you imagine, what would it be like in 5 years if I keep smoking? What would it be like in 10 years, emotionally, spiritually, in my relationships? In 20 years, if I continue down this road, what's ultimately going to cost me? And you see yourself dead inside your mind. You feel horrible. Then you change your state by you turn on your favorite music. You jump up and down. You get yourself pumped up, and you do the opposite. You rewrite the old belief and say, here's what happens if I quit smoking right now. I'm going to, write the best music in the world. In 5 years, what'll happen with this current state? God, look at me. I'm in good shape. Oh, look at the new girl that I'm with. Man, I'm just really like lucking out. Look, in 10 years, holy shit, I'm teaching. I'm famous. I'm and then in 20 years, I have it all figured out. And so I would do that all the time. And I was just a janitor. And being a janitor at that age is the best job in the world. The greatest writers in the world were janitors because it allows you the time to think, And so I love being a janitor still to this day. I didn't have to do anything. They gave me an empty hallway. So I got to hang out in this empty hallway, click in, and I would write lyrics and poetry, and I learned about words. And so I became this sort of like wordy kind of guy where I would write long lists of words, and I would write poetry and fit them into songs. And that's sort of how I started to go with the music, where I was really starting to like Cat Stevens, Bob Dylan, these other musicians that were speaking to me. And incidentally, the father and son duo, they were the teacher of Colin Malloy of the Decemberists. So, that I was listening to, they're just on another level. They're just like the best father duo, freaking Paul Simon that you could ever hear. And so I just felt lucky to even be around them just for a minute. And so I started playing in the local bars here, and I got, a few different bands together, and every weekend I started playing music. And so I started going down that road of following the music route.
Okay.
And being a teacher. Yeah, go ahead.
Yep, sure. So I think you said age 26 is when you sort of got on Jack Tree. So I don't know if you want to mention your age on your podcast. Some people are funny about it, some people aren't. But
Yeah, 42. 42.
Sure. So, so much has happened in this 20-year period of your time. I'm just wondering, what the fuck else is there? Like, could you fast forward us to between the ages of 30 and 40? Were there any significant events there that have shaped your life?
Absolutely. The biggest thing that shaped my life was actually the loss of my mom, actually, if you want to go there into the darkness. And that threw me off, to say the very least. My mom was my best friend in the world. And dealing with that grief was something that I've actually only recently been able to untangle myself from. And how I did it was from reading that book by Mo Gaudat called Solve for Happy, where he talks about grief because he's, I don't know if you're familiar with him, he's the, gosh,
would
what
you
does
like
he do over
to
at
be
Google?
cremated
He works
or
for
put into a coffin?
The Moon X or the Google X project. And this, and so what happened, he lost his son, and his son, I don't know how old his son was, but he had to create an algorithm, which is what he does, which is how his mind thinks, in order to get over his son. And so he created this intriguing algorithm. And so I heard this algorithm, and it's in the book Solve for Happy, if you want to go out and get it. And I read the algorithm, and I sat and I just thought about it. I walked around for a few hours. And then he also said something which is really intriguing, which we've all kind of heard, but for some reason it struck me deeper this time, which is that when something happens that is like horrific in your life, the worst thing that you can ever possibly imagine, when that happens, my mom had cancer. It was horrible. It was just the worst. And when that happens, and the PTSD that happens, in order to be able to get through that, you eventually, after the grief and everything, you get through that by living in the now and being in the now and not wallowing or thinking or drudging or even thinking about that thought. You will let those thoughts go. And by doing so, you honor that person. And so you live in the now. In other words, it's sort of like you have this wound and the Band-Aid is on there, and it's time to take the Band-Aid off, because technically, the wound has healed. You can remember the wound and all the tragedy that happened from there. But if you live in the now, that means letting go. So you have to let go of that. And by letting go, that really literally means you simply, when I now think about that and those horrible thoughts come up, hospice coming over, and I'll never forget. I'll tell you, here's an example. Here, you want to know how horrible it was? My mom, my best friend in the world. We're sitting in the living room. I love hospice, but this is the shit that happened. We're in the living room, and the hospice lady says to our family, she says to my mom, she says,
would you like to be cremated or put into a coffin?
To me, that was so fucking horrific. I mean, just try to imagine, it was so shocking. And the way she said it was way too loud. It wasn't sensitive. And do you want to be in a coffin or cremated? Anyway, and it brought up all these emotions. Point is that is the type of thing that when it's your best friend, that when that happens to you, and to see her and to have the family, you know what I mean? As our family is around, as this woman is talking to my mom like that, those types of memories lodge within you. And it's hard to let them go. And so you have to live in the now and to say, yes, that happened, but that happened a long time ago. That's not happening now. And it's time to let that go and to not even think about it. If it comes up, just notice it, let it go. We're in the now right now because we're moving on, baby, And by moving on, we're with my mom. You know what I mean? On a spiritual awareness level. And by the way, I am an atheist, but I'm a spiritual atheist, which means that I'm open and I have an awareness of spiritual possibilities, and I'll go with it. That's like in the float tank.
That's really interesting you mentioned that. Now, I actually haven't, put in a few words here. I haven't actually mentioned it before anywhere in my channel or my podcast, but it's getting to a point where it's pretty much inevitable. It's bound to come out in how I talk about things, and especially on the other podcasts where I interview guests and talk more about my life. And that is, I've grown up in a Christian family. I'm 22 years old now. I had a Christian upbringing. It's been great and everything. But, just after getting into self-development and opening my mind and looking at different perspectives, I've become agnostic. So atheism didn't quite fit me. I don't know how big the differences are, but I see sort of agnosticism as pretty much, a spiritual atheist, you could say. Pretty much what you've said. So I really resonate with you there. And the fact that there might be, more possibilities, because I think it's really closed-minded to say, there is no God, as if you actually know it. For me, personally, my stance is, well, no, we can't really prove there's a God, but how can you say there's not? You don't know everything. There's so much we don't know, man. There's so much possibility. And when I heard your psychedelic experience, now, there's a lot of critical thinkers. I generally consider myself quite a critical thinker and a rational guy, but the more I delve into this meditation stuff, the more I delve into the psychedelic experiences and opening my mind and listening to people talk, I've noticed that a lot of critical thinkers have then had these experiences, particularly in the psychedelic psychedelic realm, and, you know, they're so convinced that maybe this psychedelic thing is just all happening in a brain and it's all a myth. But when you really look into it, like, maybe you are actually tuning in to another frequency. I think it's so close-minded just to say, oh no, it's all in your head, it's just an illusion. Because, I don't know, what even is reality? Isn't that a fucking illusion too, dude? Like, reality is subjective from everyone's point of view. We've got sensory perceptors all over our face, we've got eyes, we've got ears, and they're all slightly different for everyone, including animals as well. So we're all seeing a different picture. So I just think it's so, there's just so many possibilities. I just want to touch on, this is going back, way back to what you said, and that was, you know, you when you tripped on acid, you said, you know, holy shit, like there actually is or might be a god. And I constantly hear this, even from critical thinkers who have these psychedelic experiences. They're like, no, I shit you not. There has to be something. The universe is connected. There may be a higher being. Do you have any input on that at all?
It's really, I think it's a fascinating thing, and you don't even need to be on acid to even experience it, obviously, right? I mean, you can have a psychedelic experience right that moment in the middle of the night before you go back to bed, and you're in that hypnagogic state, and the colors are swirling, and you're kind of tapping in. And if you've done psychedelics, by the way, I think it's easier to tap in. Mm-hmm. But in that moment, you can say to yourself, oh my God, I'm going to die. And when you say, oh my God, I'm going to die, it's such a strong sensation. It's such a strong, it's like somebody who has cancer and they come to grips with it and they see that they're going to die. That moment, that connection is such a spiritual event, you know, where for me, it feels spiritual in the sense that it's time. It feels suddenly timeless. It feels, I feel like I'm touching I'm going into the other side. You're going to the other side. You're going into the other dimension just by simply doing that. And I don't know why that is or why it's able to connect. But, you know, you can have the same thing with a float tank, right? Mm-hmm. Going in there and having those spiritual awakenings, I think, is a good way to talk about it or to define it or to think about it as well.
Could you just briefly walk us, or however much you want, I've got plenty of time personally. I don't know about you, but I'm really enjoying this. Could you walk us through, like, what actually is a float tank? Because most people don't know. And how did you come across it? And what experiences have you had in there? I'm curious.
I don't know how I came across it. Maybe the movie Altered States. I've always wanted a float tank. And so I sort of, I lucked out. I got involved in this computer company. And so I got a certain amount of money. I was like almost, because I was part of this like merger thing. And so, I got in the technology industry after I, was in teaching. And so anyway, point being, I was able to afford this stuff because it's a little expensive. And so I bought a house and stuff and I got this thing and I put it, I said, well, one of the fucking reasons I want to get a house is because I can get a float tank. And it's the only reason why, really. And so, you know what I mean? And so I went and I built it in my garage and I built walls like, these foam core actual walls with soundproofing in them. Anyway, a float tank is a 4x8 coffin-like device, giant rectangle square, but don't let the word coffin scare you. Where it has a lid on it, and you open up the lid, and inside the tank is 11 inches of water filled with about 600 pounds of salt. You float on top of the water. When you close the door, it's like you're in a womb or in a cave, and it allows you to have these magical experiences because the water is heated to 93.6 degrees, which is the same as your outer skin, external skin temperature. And, and there's the plumbing and there's a little air tube that comes through. If you put your head in the right place, you can feel the air, and it's not built perfectly airtight anyway. So you have nothing to worry about. You can't drown. If you're moving back and forth, just relax, let it all go. And the first time I think that I went in there, I was so blown away. I actually cried and I went in my shower. I broke down. This is what I've been looking for my whole life. I said, this is exactly what I've been looking for. I was crying. I remember in the shower thinking like, this is, I've been missing out on this cool experience, and these guys, I remember one of the original trippers, it wasn't Aldous Huxley, Timothy O'Leary. Anyway, one of these original guys, when he finally passed away, he had cancer, and he said he liked his float tank so much that he had the float tank put in with him in the hospital room. Like they brought the float tank to his hospital. And so he went into the float tank as he was like, as he was like dying and he was tripping on acid. And, so anyway, so it's that important. It's that big. It's that magical to be able to have, a a super sensory experience that you don't have to take acid and you can naturally do it anytime you want, and to venture into and to explore the different realms of consciousness. That's exactly what I wanted to be doing. And I go through waves. Like, I sleep in it. I get up at 4 a.m. I try to hit the REM stage where I can do the REM, dreaming types of stuff.
Yeah, okay. And, I just want to cut you off. So sleep. Yeah, lucid dreaming, man. This is really interesting. Could you like sort of go in as much depth as possible as to what it actually feels like to not only fall asleep in the float tank, but wake up? Because I have had just one experience in my life in a float tank, and it was really weird, and I'm still processing it right now. But can you because it's all black and your senses are absolutely deprived. Do you feel yourself going from consciousness to falling asleep? And when you wake up, what's it like waking up into like no senses and just nothing? Like, what does it feel like, these two transitions?
Every experience is different, and it depends on what intention you go in there, and it's going to be different for every single person, every single time. And so every time I've gone in there, it's been basically totally different. But to go in there and to sleep, I'm the type of person who I want to go out there as far as I can. So it's sort of my intention. I'm trying to push myself to hit into the land of lucid dreaming and astral projection and all that kind of thing to some level, And so then I'm like doing little hacks, different mantras, different holotropic breathing, Wim Hof breathing, different ways to to play with floating in the water at the same time and doing that and doing the REM, which you have to do at a certain time, right? You got to do it between like 4 and 6 a.m, basically, the last part of your sleep. And so for me, what I'm doing is I'm like, I get up, tell my wife. I don't really say anything to my wife. I sneak out of the bedroom, and then she'll like, oh, where is he? Oh, I know where he is. Drinking salt over the house. Drinking salt all over the house. And so, when I'm in there, the thing that I'm thinking to myself often, there are different phases and processes that I go through, but I think I probably told you about the refan. That was one of the things that I sort of feel like I kind of stumbled upon, which was just this idea of like a simple mantra, which you just say re, and re means that you're in reality, and fan means fan. That means you're in fantasy. So every time your mind drifts off, you go fan. That means I'm thinking about myself down at the duck pond. When I come back and I'm hanging out with you, Brandon, we're talking right now in the microphone, I'd be going re. See what I mean? But now my mind drifts off and I'm suddenly thinking about, when I was a little kid. That means fan. But I come back to the present moment, re. And then I'll go re, fan, re, fan, re, fan, re, fan, re, fan. And I'll start playing with different speeds until I can like play. And I just start playing with the concepts of the refan itself. And I'll be doing it throughout the day as I'm walking to get myself ready for the float tank experience. Because I know that if I can differentiate between reality and fantasy, which all comes back to that acid trip, right? Then, and being a kid and playing with reality, fantasy, riding on my bike, in a small town, loneliness. I know that if I can have this sort of these spiritual awarenesses, that when I then later get into the float tank, it's going to be easier for me to enter into not only the hypnagogic interregnum, but also the land of the void, or what I personally, I don't know what everybody calls it. I call it the vacuum or the void. And the vacuum or the void is just sort of an advanced pre-lucid dream state where you enter it's like you enter another room. It's different than hypnagogic because it's another level where for me, it's sort of like, Tibetan Book of the Dead. You're entering, like, you're going through a doorway. You're going through a maze. You're going through a place where it's like, boom, I'm actually literally in a place. I'm in a place that is 3D. I can look around and I'm in a place and I'm floating. So from there, what you do is you start to visualize the flame. You start to visualize a flame or visualize some color. And from visualizing that, hopefully you can, let that sort of take off. And when it begins to take off, you try to allow yourself to go into it, to go in. And if you can let this flame, take on a life of its own, then chances are you can go into, if you're lucky, you got to do it 2 times a day. If you float tank 2 times a day, you're going to be lucid dreaming all the time. And that's what you have to do. You really do. First thing in the morning, later in the day, boom. And then you'll just naturally start lucid dreaming. And that's the reason I got this puppy, because lucid dreaming is my thing. And so, but again, it goes in ways where it's too powerful, where I have to quit. Like right now, I'm just starting to get back into it. I quit for a while. I was like, shit, it's just too much. I can't handle this. It's like taking acid all the time.
Yeah, for sure, man. Just a few interesting points to add to the conversation. There's this book called, what is it? I might have it next to me here. No, anyway, it's like Lucid Dreaming something or other by Robert Waggoner. I know that's the author. I've reached out to him to see if I can get him on the podcast. I'm really determined, but I feel like lucid dreaming is an extremely untapped piece of potential that not many people are paying attention to right now. And I don't know if you've read Exploring the World of Lucid Dreaming by Stephen LaBerge.
Stephen LaBerge.
LaBerge,
Yeah.
yes. He was the first to popularize, basically, in a sense, just in this niche world, that you can actually develop your skills within a lucid dream, because your mind can't really distinguish between reality and non-reality or whatever in your dreams. You know, like I've done things that felt 100% real in my lucid dreams, and I'm like, man, I've never got to the point where I can actually maintain the lucid dream long enough to develop a skill. But, you know, I've come across like women in my my lucid dreams that I've interacted with. So just imagine. If you can learn to maintain your lucidity for, you know, an hour, imagine that. If you could like spend time in this lucid dreaming world, which feels so real, and develop your skills, develop your confidence, you can learn to play the piano. There's a whole chapter on it in Exploring the World of Lucid Dreaming. Just imagine that. Everyone is hungry for more time and to do more in less time in this modern day. It's a very fast-paced world. People want to learn more in less time. And then there's this thing called lucid dreaming, which not many people know about, that actually has this huge potential that still needs some work on it, because maintaining lucidity for many people is quite difficult. But there's just so much untapped potential in that right now. So I'm so glad we can talk about this. It's just incredible.
It is. You know, what we're talking about, you know, when you go in there and you meet these people, it's fascinating because you're talking to people who actually believe that that's who they are. You know, you can go up there, you know, talk to them and you can say, hey, you know, isn't this fascinating? You're a part of me right now. I'm talking to a part of myself. Do you realize that I am talking to myself right now? And they'll say, I am not you. In other words, they are a swing set. Okay. And by that, like a swing set, let's like you go up and the swing set is just sitting there and it's sitting there inside of your brain. Well, if you go up and you push the swing set, then the swing set starts to rock back and forth. It'll start to flow back and forth. But the swing set's been there the whole time. You just have to jostle it. And that's what that person is like. They appear to believe that they are real people. I've done it so many times in my lucid dreams, or I go up and I try to have a conversation with them. They're in character, man. And that's part of the problem. Because I'm like, I really want to, you know, talk to God and shit like that. Sometimes they'll say something like, you know, well, you do realize what dimension you're in right now, don't you? And I'll say, no, what dimension am I in? They'll say RX-19287. And they'll hand me a piece of paper and they'll write it down for me. You know, shit like that, where it just like, they believe it. They are, and then it makes you wonder, you know, it comes back to being a spiritual atheist, who we really are. And part of it is just consciousness exploration, this untapped world. What is consciousness, you know? And is it something that is here or not? I don't think it is. It's not static. It's like a giant loop. It's something that extends. It's like, that's when you think of one thing that it extends way, it's like way over there. You can think something here, but it's like holographic. The shit flows way down, you know, in a huge loop. It's like, it's way down there. So yeah.
It's funny. I just want to talk a bit about out-of-body experiences. There are a lot of people that encounter what they call, you know, NDEs, so near-death experiences. And apparently, you know, DMT, dimethyltryptamine, is released in your brain when you die, according to many sources. I haven't looked into it enough to confirm that, but they, you know, it's very common for these people that are near death, having these near-death experiences, to feel like they're out of their body, and they're convinced that they're floating out of their body. Now, when it comes to lucid dreaming, there's this other thing called astral projection. Now, in the lucid dreaming world, there's some people that put them together as one, just they're the same thing, and there's some people that separate them as two distinguishable things. Now, you know, the idea is that lucid dreaming is, you know, it all happens in your head. You become conscious in your dreams and you can direct the course of your dreams. Not 100% control it, but direct the course of the dream. And then there's astral projection, and that is very similar to lucid dreaming. If I see it this way, very similar to lucid dreaming, but a lot of APs actually believe, you know, they've got a soul body and it's attached to this like chain-like thing. And you can actually bring your soul body out of your physical body and go into like the material world, like what I'm seeing right now here. Like there could be an astral body just floating in my house right now. So I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts? Do you believe lucid dreaming and astral projection are the same thing, mainly created in the mind, or do you think there's actually a soul body that can then come out of us into the material world?
Well, again, we're doing consciousness. To me, it's consciousness exploration probably, but being the spiritual atheists that we are, when you're in the middle of the process, you go with it. And so I'll tell you what, though, if you want to lucid dream, it's going to be easier to lucid dream if you think that you're astral projecting, because there's something about the moving and spinning and freeing yourself from this body makes it a lot easier to fly out of your body. So if you want to have a lucid dream, then you should focus on astral projecting, because you're focusing on your third eye and the breathing and the heartbeat and that sort of thing, and being in the present moment. All this thing of this mind-body connection stuff, and then leaving the body. There's a lot to be said for that. When I'm in the float tank, I'm floating out of my body. It's like whoosh, here we go, and that makes it a lot easier to attain those higher states. Sometimes you'll just enter the other world, but usually, generally speaking, I think in terms of astral projection.
Interesting. All right, so moving on, Wolf. Wow, this is incredible. I'm the kind of guy that could sit here and talk to a like-minded person and listen to them for the next 3 hours, man. But what we're going to do is, I'd love to invite you onto season 2. I feel like there's so much more we haven't covered, man.
There is. We just started. We just
touched the surface. So yeah, I really want to invite you back for season 2. But anyway,
thank you.
We're in the moment now. Okay, yeah. So before I move on to the Tim Ferriss questions, I just want to let you know, I don't know what your time commitments are right now, but there is about 10 Tim Ferriss questions. So feel free to spend as little or as much as you want on those questions, and that's when we'll start wrapping up. But before we get into the Tim Ferriss, there's just one more thing I want to ask you, and that is, have you read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle?
Yes, I love it.
Now, I struggled with this book. I read it 2 years ago. I have changed a lot since then, so I really want to come back to it. But I really struggled to resonate with it as much as I wanted to. I read through the 200 pages, and I was the guy that was cranky on Goodreads.com and left like a 1-star review. I'm like, what is this bullshit? Spread all over by Oprah. I spent 200 pages of my life, and I got fucking nothing from it. I'm one of those guys. But I feel like there's something massive I'm missing, because I get a lot of shit for it on my channel. I've got this animated book summary, The Power of Now, and I've just like put on a Rickroll, so people get Rickrolled when they watch it, just because I didn't get anything from it. So anyway, I sort of feel bad for that now. There might be something more to it. I just want to see what your perspective is, and I don't know what it is yet, but like, what am I missing? It's killing me inside. I don't know what I'm missing.
There's only one thing that you need to really take from that book, which is that I am not my mind. That's the whole fucking thing. That's what
Wolf, that's what got me so amped up. I'm like, why did I need to read 200 pages just to get that message? I'm like,
totally.
So he's saying,
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I'm so with you. That's the only best. That's the best part of the book. I felt the book was worth it for that one message, but I agree with you 100%. Okay. The rest of it, I can't even remember.
Okay. That is really.
But I love that. That concept blew me away so much when I read it, that it resonated with me so much. Which, by the way, I think, he's getting that concept from other Buddhists and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I just loved it. I just at the time when it came out, it was somewhat of a new thought for us Westerners on some level. Just the way it was phrased, or the vernacular, or I don't know, the way the words came together. It hit us, a lot of us, really hard. And he talked about a few other things, like I think the pain body, which was interesting. So the pain body and then I am not my mind. Those are the two big concepts I got out of that book. But you could let the rest of it go. I totally agree.
Wow, that's so interesting. I think the mindset I had coming into it was like, I'd briefly read about this stuff already, and like I just sort of internalized it intellectually, like, oh yeah, be in the moment. Okay, man, yeah, that makes sense. Whatever. All right, what's the next thing I can learn? I think I was just too fast forward and too hungry to learn more, and not actually embed that now concept into my life, which is perhaps why I was so crazy mad at it.
Well, it's hard to tell though, because I didn't actually read it. I listened to it on audiobook, which is probably a difference. So when I was listening to it on audiobook, I was sort of, you got to understand where I was in my life. I was going through this PTSD, once again, situation as a teacher down in Las Vegas, out of all things, which is for our next podcast, right? Part 2. And so I was listening to fucking Deepak Chopra. Okay. I was listening to like all this spiritual stuff to try to heal. And that's what I was doing. And that's why I loved it. So I'm coming from this place of like, let's sit in a hot tub and try to survive the middle schoolers.
Oh man.
By the way, these were normal middle schoolers, dude. These were not fucking normal middle schoolers. And it's really important that I say this. Okay. Okay. Let me say this. There is a school in Helena that was built, and before they built it, there was a cemetery there, and they took all the dead bodies and they put the school on top of a cemetery. All right. Let's keep it at that. Wait for the next podcast.
Whoa. Next level shit.
Right. I'm saying this is not normal shit, dude. All right. Because you think like middle school, you laugh, right?
Yeah.
No. And I'm not the only one. Anyway, we'll talk
Okay,
more.
yeah, man. We've got season 2, we've got season 3, we've got season 4, man. All right, so I've got some Tim Ferriss questions for you. There's about 10 here. Feel free to spend as little or as much as you want on the questions. I'm just gonna pump them through. I might not have anything of value to say after, so really,
I might not either.
Yeah, I'm just gonna list through them and maybe not even respond to you. We're just here to listen, so I'll pump through them.
Sounds great.
Okay, number 1. When you think of the word successful, who's the first person who comes to mind and why?
Woody Allen. He's the best comedian who has ever lived. The best. He's a philosophical thinker, the most prolific filmmaker, the most beautiful, insightful, funny intellect. He hits it on all counts for me. There's never been a greater comedian than Woody Allen, I feel. I mean, George Carlin is amazing, but in terms of like prolificness, he puts out the movies. He doesn't stop. That's just what first thing that came up. I mean, there's more, but that's the first one that came up.
Cool. Next one. What is something you believe that other people think is insane?
Well, Bigfoot just came through my mind, but I don't believe in Bigfoot. I've been with Bigfoot hunters. You probably know those
Yeah, I
stories.
noticed you had a Bigfoot video. I was just having a look
I
at
did.
it before. Yeah.
That's what flashes through my mind. What do I believe that other people think that are insane? Oh my God. I'm a vegetarian. That's kind of a joke, isn't it? But no, I really do. I'm into the vegetarian vegan thing. And to me, where I'm from, okay, you got to understand where I'm from, the land of trumpeters. Often, I'm in Montana, right?
Yeah.
And, these people who go hunting and we're going to do redneck shit. And that is, for them, I am in the land, dude. I am like, I don't know, stranger in a strange land. So let's say vegetarian.
Yeah, that's interesting. I just want to go off on a tangent here because I'm a vegetarian too. And I'm a little bit hesitant to say I'm vegan because in actuality, I'm like, yeah, I know what you mean, man, because of the connotations around it. I'm sort of like semi-vegan right now because I know it's apparently much bigger than I thought. It's not just the food you eat, but apparently even like the products you use in terms of it being derived from animals and whatnot. So I'm not quite at that level. And I'm not sure whether I'll go there yet. I really don't know at this stage. But I'm just...
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I'm just curious. This is a whole nother season, man, like veganism. But just briefly, what made you vegetarian in particular? What motivated you?
The ethical treatment of animals, that I think that we're living in a holocaust of animals. When I see a pig, I see a person. I know that they're 99% genetic compared to us. And so it, I struggle with this all the time. I struggle with it throughout the day, every single day. I think about this all the time on a variety of levels. Same with the people who are in Japan, like that movie, The Cove. I have to take my Quentin Tarantino violence and put it into my art for the people who are doing this sort of thing to what I consider to be innocent animals. I consider them to be 6-year-old innocent, little cats and dogs. We love our cats and dogs, but why don't we love these pigs who are smarter and the same thing as our cats and dogs? And and the way that we're killing them haunts me, and the way that we treat them haunts me. These are little children. These are not, how like when you have a cat or a dog, you're like, this is a family member.
Yeah.
Well, and they are, these are our family members. And we're doing this to the cats and dogs, man. These are people. These are people to me. These are not cats and dogs. These are actual living being creatures with consciousnesses. So that's the issue.
Yeah, man. I just want to add a few things. Like I went on this nature walk yesterday, just a spontaneous nature walk. I've got a feeling of wanderlust right now where I want to travel the world and experiencing new shit. So I actually don't tell anyone, but I actually trespassed a property. I'm sure they won't mind. I live around lovely people, but I trespassed this property, and there's lots of eucalyptus trees here in Australia. There's bushes, and I just started trudging through nature, just I don't know, breathing in the oxygen. It was beautiful. I was listening to my audiobook, took my earphones out, I was just listening to nature. It was lovely. So anyway, I walk up down into this sort of like creek, and it had no water in it, and I'm just on this property, big open land, and then there's just this creek, and then I saw a face. I thought, oh fuck, what's that? And it turns out it was a sheep. And so there was just me and this sheep in this giant paddock and a creek.
Wow.
And I just fixed eyes with this sheep, and I was just staring at it. I'm like, I wonder what that sheep's thinking right now. And so anyway, I just have like this staring contest with this sheep. And I just thought, is he going to come over to me or what's up? And so I'm down in this creek, and I just lift my head up and down, and I just oscillate between staring at the sheep, and then I go down and I wait for 10 seconds. I'm like, I wonder if he's going to still be staring or not. And so sure enough, I bring my head back up after 10 seconds and he's still staring. I'm thinking, what on earth is this sheep thinking? And so eventually he comes over to me. I climb into this tree just in case, because I felt a little bit of fear, to be honest, because I I've never really been around a sheep before. He's a pretty big guy. He had a bit of weight on him. And so I hopped into this tree just to give me some shelter, some protection. And the sheep walked over. He sort of ran. I thought, oh, fuck, it's okay. I'll just keep my cool. It's just a sheep. And he came over to me, and then he just stared at me. And he had these big gawking eyes looking right up to me. And at this point, we were about a meter apart. And next thing you know, I'm just trying to talk to this sheep. For my whole life, I've thought, fucking, maybe they can speak English. I mean that not really on a serious level, but, just whatever. And I'm thinking,
come on, sheep. You can talk to me. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone. I'm right here. It's just us. Come on, tell me what you're thinking, man.
And so here I am in my fucking rainbow poncho, my dreadlocks, in the middle of this fucking paddock in a creek talking to a sheep. Or apparently talking to a sheep. And I was just thinking, at that time, I was just trying to resonate with the hardcore vegans. I don't know if I should say hardcore, but vegans who have this animal morality thing. And I'm just thinking, yeah, we eat this sheep. And I was like talking to the sheep, and I'm like, how do you feel about that sheep? In my head, I was thinking, like, how do you feel about that? And it was just sort of staring blankly into the distance. So anyway, I guess the point I'm trying to get at is that, my primary motivation for turning vegetarian was actually the health benefits. I read this book, How Not to Die by Michael Greger, I believe it was, and it just blew me away. Full on science. It really appealed to my rational mind, which is generally where I tend to be, but, with open-mindedness, of course. So that was my primary motivation, but I'm finding a lot of, vegans have this motivation of animal morality. And so I feel just the need to share it with someone, and that is, I'm conflicted because, like, when I see a dog, right, dogs are like family, we have this emotional connection. You can really see in a dog, he always comes up to you, he loves you, he responds to your gestures. It's just like a real lovely human being that gives you unconditional love. But then the sheep, I don't quite have that emotional connection with a sheep. Like, I tried too hard, but I saw this sheep and it just didn't feel quite as human and emotional as a dog. And then when I keep picking out all these different animals, a lot of vegans from the morality perspective, I think say, we're all sentient beings, we should treat all animals the same no matter what they are. But when I see an ant or just a fucking like pests and termites, I'm just thinking, well, they're sentient beings, but a termite compared to a dog, I just can't fucking make the connection. So I'm thinking, I don't know, do I eat termites but not eat dogs? But apparently from the morality perspective, you're not meant to kill any animals or anything. So I'm just conflicted, and that's why I can't get motivated by the animal morality perspective. And I feel like, if you keep going down the line, somewhere along the line, an animal or a living organism has been slayed. I'm just conflicted there. I felt the need to share it with you. I don't know if you've got anything to say in response, but there you go. There you have it.
No, I totally get what you're saying. And remember, it is this is very conflicting. This isn't like simple stuff. This is like, the predator, who is the gazelle, who is being eaten by the alligator. This is the world that we live on that makes things so difficult to understand and confusing, especially if you want to bring up God, when you start thinking about the fact that there are brutal atrocities wherever we turn. And that makes things start to get really interesting. Right, universe? Right, universe, please tell me the reason for that tortured child. Similarly, you look into the eyes of a bear, just like you're talking about, and like in that movie by Werner Herzog about the Timothy character who goes up to Alaska, remember? And how frightening it was when he got torn apart and eaten by those grizzly bears up in the maze. How absolutely horrific and awful it was. And then he talks about, this is what happens when I look into the eyes of a grizzly bear. I don't see anything. I don't see a soul. I see like a predator. And you know what? I totally agree. I hate grizzly bears. I go hiking around here all the time, and I bring my mace wherever I go because of the predatorial black bears. Even they're all over the place. And so, I mean, how terrifying is this? And so I won't go jogging with these beasts. And so I don't have a vegetarian bone in my body for these other creatures. So yes, I'm selective. I'm speciesist. Like there's some that I don't really care, but you know what? I could care less about a bear. Bears terrify me. You can kill as many bears as you want, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, interesting, man. Veganism. It's definitely. We could even go on about that longer. I'm trying to get in contact with Vegan Gains. Actually, he's a pretty. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's a pretty controversial character in the world of veganism on YouTube. So I don't know, man. We'll see whether he's bound to. He's very passionate about it, like very front facing. So I assume he will beat the shit out of me say that I'm vegetarian and semi-vegan, but that could be interesting. Maybe we'll try and get him on season 2 of the podcast. Moving on, Wolf. Moving on. What is the book you've given most as a gift? If you haven't gifted it, what's your favorite?
Oh, that's a tough question. All right, let me see if anything.
As a fellow reader myself, I know it is a tough one.
That's a really tough one. You know, it really depends on who we're talking about. And so it depends. I'll give gifts depending on who I give it to, you know. But in the realm of this would be Roald Dahl, actually. I love Roald Dahl's adult books in particular. There was the BFG. I just find him to be a super genius. And I like his adult fiction, like my Uncle Oswald. They're so cutting and dark and biting and highly sexual. And they crack me up, man. I can read those over and over. They're like a Twilight Zone episode on steroids. So you know that he was, you know, ferociously on drugs when he wrote these. He's up there with Alice in Wonderland. He's into dreams. He's like a mystic. Like when I was telling you earlier today when we were talking, you know, you're like, I love to learn. I'm a curious person. I'm like, you're like a mystic, but you're doing it on this plane. And by plane, I was hoping that you weren't thinking plane that flies. I'm, you know, plane dimension. And I knew that you knew that, but then I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, sure thing. So Roald Dahl, right on. Yeah, I used to read a lot of that in my childhood. So next question is, what is your favorite? Oh, this might be a tough one for you too. What is your favorite documentary or movie?
Oh my God. Let's put shit.
There you go.
Yeah. Nostalgic Reasons, Harold and Maude. Movies that move me. You know, Schindler's List actually was one that I saw at the time that I have a real somewhat of obsession with the Holocaust in terms of studies. So Schindler's List, interestingly enough, I mean, if that even counts, I mean, granted it's Spielberg. I know how some people might think about that, like just because Spielberg, but I think that Spielberg is incredible. I was watching Gremlins the other night. It was great. Yeah. Yeah, I think
we'll move on to the next one. What purchase of $100 or less has most positively impacted your life in the last 12 months?
Oh, last 12 months? 12 months. I'm looking around the place. $100? Oh, geez. Maybe the bed jet. The bed jet is this, you know, it's like a chili pad. You put it on your bed. And so to warm my feet often get cold. I'm out here making YouTube videos like at freaking 4 a.m. Okay. And the bed jet shoots hot air onto your feet. So I like to pace myself. Yeah. So I like to pace myself to conserve energy because I get up really early to do my YouTube videos. And then, you know, like then I got to go to work. Right. So then when I'm done doing that, I go and I try to conserve energy by taking a quick power nap right before work. And my feet are really cold. And instead of jumping into the bath, which would just suck me in, you know how baths are, I just put my feet on that heater. And that costs like, wait, did you say $100?
Okay, who cares? What's the price of this thing? Okay, sure.
Sorry, that's as cheap as I could go. Anyway, go ahead for right now.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's really interesting. Thank you. Break the rules. Sometimes you need to break the rules.
Gotta break the rules.
What are your morning rituals? And if you don't have any, what do the first 60 minutes of your day typically look like?
Oh yeah, totally. As soon as I get up, cold shower. The second I get up, that's what I'm doing. I'm gonna tell you what I do right now. The very second I get up, because I'm creating a wedge. And I could go on and on and on about this, but let's just say cold shower. And I invented this silly game using the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 rule by Mel, whatever her name is, Robbins, not Tony. And I try to get myself into the game as fast as I can. So anyway, I jump into the cold shower. Then I meditate, and I do these, and I'll probably lift some weights. Got to feed my cat because my cat woke me up every morning at 4:30. And then I go right. I do a quick little journal, quick speed write. Hopefully, I'm going to hit some dreams there. And then after that, I have a whole checklist probably of what I'm supposed to be doing, and I just start running down the checklist depending on how on where I'm at, you know, and depending on what I'm doing in my life. So whatever is the most important thing. A lot of times, what's competing with my YouTube is my movies and music, and so I'm usually going in between music and movies, and then I'm like, oh my god, I gotta get my weekly video out, and then I'll start cramming on YouTube, and I have a little checklist where I'll just go, okay, set up the camera, set up that, and I'll just checklist it. I'll just checklist it.
Sure thing. Next question. What obsessions do you explore on the evenings or weekends? That's a pretty broad question for you, I think.
Oh, by the way, on the last question, I also pump myself up in exercise. Like, what was the question again? What was this question?
What obsessions do you explore on the evenings or weekends? Weekends, perhaps something we haven't touched on.
Sessions. Songwriting. Songwriting would be at the top of the list. That's what I do on the weekends. I'm doing songwriting. I'm playing music.
Cool. No worries. What topic would you speak about if you were asked to give a TED Talk on something outside of your main area of expertise?
Oh, outside of my main area? Dang it. That question has a trick at the end. That trick at the end threw me off. I'm like, oh, finally an easy question. And then all of a sudden snap at the very end of the sentence. It totally, you know what I mean? He did that on purpose.
That's right.
Yeah. Outside of my area of expertise. That's hilarious. Oh my God. I have no idea. I'm going to pass on that one. Pass.
No problem. Yeah, some of these are meant to really meant to be hard and make you think. Sorry to torture you like this. What is the best or most worthwhile investment you've made? And that could be an investment of money, time, energy, or any other resource. And how did you decide to make that investment?
Investing time in my wife, putting time into my relationship with my wife, I think is the best. And I do it all the time. I'm like, this is the time that I put aside. It's date night. I'm going to put all my other stuff aside to spend time with this magical creature. And we're going to go for our nightly walk. And we have this gorgeous walk, and we walk around the circle through the wilderness, and we run into moose and stuff like that. And so we go walk through the woods, and that would be it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Investing in her.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing, because I know Tony Robbins, he said the same thing. Like, what do we do when we, achieve success, or just life in general? Like, we always want to share it with someone, and it's pretty much apparent in 99% of human beings. What do? We post on Facebook, we post YouTube videos. If we get a promotion or whatever it is, we go and tell someone. We're like, oh, we got to share this with someone. So it's really great that you mentioned that. And I was just listening to a video by Grant Cardone, some real estate entrepreneur, millionaire guy. He's really inspiring.
Yeah, down in Florida. I know him. Yep.
Yeah,
down in Florida.
Yeah. So he was saying, he spent his life from the ages like 26 to 46, don't quote me on that, but like 20 years, and he had no one to share it with. Like, he was making millions. He had girls coming in and out of his apartment and everything, but he found that eventually he found his dream wife, and then he's had her since, for 13 years now, and it's just been like the best thing ever. So really great to hear. Moving on, there's just a couple more. One more, actually. No, two more. Do you have a quote you live your life by or think about often?
80% is just showing up.
Okay, cool, man. That just about wraps it up. So just
wonderful.
The listeners, this has been awesome. The listeners listening in, I want to ask you where we can find you on social media.
Just type in Wolfsuka on the search bar in YouTube. I mean, does that count? Is that social media? Yeah, let's do that. Let's focus. I mean, that's basically my vlog right now. So I think that of sorts, I mean, I'm going more and more into that direction, at least. I think we're going to be doing daily videos, most likely. But then again, by the time this video actually comes out, who knows where I'll be? Maybe there won't even be like a thing. I mean, geez, I'm a Gemini. I can't tell what I'm going to do one day from the next.
Yeah, that's what I love about your channel. I was just watching a video the other day, and man, you're a really creative guy. I always look forward to watching it. So I'll leave your links in the description.
You too.
And yeah, I just want to say thank you again for your time, Wolf. I really appreciate it, and this has just been an absolute blast.
I had an incredible time with you. I just absolutely love and adore you. I can't wait to hang out with you again shortly.
If you'd like 3 gold nuggets from the book I'm currently reading, packed into a short, entertaining weekly email, then head to brandonnankivell.com/subscribe. This is also the best way to interact with me and keep up with what I'm doing. Again, head to brandonnankivell.com/subscribe. As usual, thank you for listening, my friends. I release new episodes every week. Make sure you don't miss one by subscribing. It's super easy and means a lot to me. Go to iTunes, search for The 1% Show, and click subscribe. Once again, I'm your host, Brandon Nankivell, and I'll see you in the next episode.